Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special session of your Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, full commission meeting. Today is August 8th, 2024. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that we have individuals attending remotely on site as well as in person. All persons joining us here today, please mute your phones when not speaking to avoid any background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so the public that is participating knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and its current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General's office. And please make sure that when you're speaking at an audible level that can be captured by the clerk, and to ensure that your comments can be heard by those in attendance. I will now call this meeting to order. Clerk, please announce the meeting and the roll call.
Good evening. Hereby notified that a special meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas is scheduled to be conducted in a hybrid format on Thursday, August 8th, 2024 at 5 p.m. for a budget workshop in the fifth floor conference room of the Municipal Office Building, 701 North 7th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. Immediately following the conclusion of the workshop, an executive session will be held for consultation with counsel on matters that would be deemed privileged in an attorney-client relationship such as litigation. Roll call. Davis.
Here.
Bynum. Here. Burrows.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Ramirez. We have an absence memo. Hill.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Lopez.
Here.
Stites. Garner.
Here. Thank you, clerk. Tonight, we're continuing our series of budget workshops. Our county administrator presented his budget proposal to this commission last Thursday. Last night, we discussed the county portion of financials for the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas, Kansas. And tonight, we'll focus on the city side of the budget financials. At the conclusion of the workshop, as the clerk indicated, we will have an executive session. I'll now turn it over to our county administrator, Mr. David Johnston, and he'll run the meeting from this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, thank you for giving us the opportunity again to work with you to continue this march toward a past balanced budget for fiscal year 25. This year, today, this meeting, we are focusing on the city general fund under the policy direction to craft it under revenue neutral. I made a long presentation last Thursday, but I think as we started yesterday's meeting, let's have a quick primer of the city side of the budget. And we have handouts like we had last night, and Dr. Knieven will give you that general overview.
Good evening to the mayor and the commission. As County Administrator said, we're going to talk about the City General Fund tonight. And just to give you some reminders about where this fund is in total. This is a comparison, and you do have hard copies of this at your table. This is a comparison of the City General Fund revenues. We went ahead and included this again. You've seen this chart before. It has not changed, but it just shows you where we had some changes. It illustrates the revenue neutral for the property tax. And what that means is that then our revenue generated in 24 will be the revenue that's generated in 25. You see the reductions that were made in the BPU payment that they make to the UG. And that was a variety of things that was at the direction and consensus of the commission to include an equivalent to a 1% reduction for residential customers. It also was a reduction related to the GM shutdown, and then to fund the senior waiver program, I think is a good way to distinguish it. If they qualify, they basically get a waiver of that charge, separate from the rebates for sales and utility taxes, which are or payments, which are down on an expense side. So those are also funded. So that just gives you the total revenue. So you can see in 24, when the budget was adopted, it was 179,195,000. And with the reductions and changes, It's 181,005. So when you look up at the very top, then it's those same numbers. So the revenue is actually new revenue going up by 1.8 million. But our original projection on the other page was 3.88. First thing we did was correct the structural balance. That's information we've shared before. So that was the 1,458,000. I believe it's on your handout here. That's more detailed. But that came out of the 181. I'm sorry, came out of the 183. Then was the BPU payment reductions. Then was the structural imbalance from 24. So the net new revenue was 181,005. On the expense side, then you can see that that's an outline of the expenses. Totaled 181,002, and that's intended to communicate that this is a balanced budget that we brought forward. Similar to the slide that we showed yesterday, we wanted to kind of outline in a more simple way how the reductions and additions to the budget affected the net operating increases and reductions. So on the left, it's those same numbers. New revenue, 1,000,008 minus the imbalance. So the net new revenue was 327,000. And then it's that 181,005. So that's the same number I just mentioned on the other page. Then on the expense side, we incorporated the employee contractual pay as well as a COLA for all employees. So that was 4.2 million. The city general fund's larger, more employees are on the city general fund. The health insurance, again, this is at a 3% rate, not 7%, and that's 525. The personnel trend alignment that we've talked about on the county side, same thing on the city side. So that was 2.3 million. We mentioned that we had software agreements that are contractual for our enterprise systems, and then cybersecurity improvements we felt were mission critical. So that was built in at 550. Excuse me. The net adjustment on capital cash projects was 1.19. This is a difference than on the county side. On the county side for the cash capital projects and equipment, cash, not leased, we zeroed that out. We didn't have the capacity to take on more capital. On the city side, we reduced it, but we were able to keep capital in at 4.3 million. And if you can read the little tiny handout, because the words are a little small, what's remaining in the budget for discussion and direction is listed out there for you. In terms of the litigation fund, we originally targeted $1 million. I believe we ended up at 240. Is that right? Is that what we ended? Okay, I'm going to correct that. It ended up being 145, and I can explain where the difference is. So originally on municipal court, we thought the difference for the public defender would be 35,000. And it actually ended up being 170,000. Once we got the documents, it actually looked at the increase. And so we took the difference out of, sorry, legal department, but out of the litigation fund that we were trying to replenish. So I apologize. We'll get that corrected and get that redistributed. The net bottom dollar, though, was then our, that list of those things above. It essentially would be, litigation would be 145. We'd add in a line for the public defender so that you would have still the same bottom line numbers. Then that new revenue is applied against that. So then the gap to close, because we had a larger gap in the presentation that the county administrator gave you that said we needed like $10 million. That was our aspirational goal, but we were not able to fund that, just like on the county side. We were not able to close that gap. So we ended up proposing a budget that's 8.7 million, almost 8.78 million of reductions that then are spread throughout the departments. And you've got a listing of those reductions at your place. So the net reduction brought the expenses for the city general fund to 181,002. So that is a positive balanced budget with an extra, I think, $2,900 to go to the fund balance. But it was a balanced budget. So again, we'll put this back up when the discussions and questions and comments start, because it's a good reference point of if something comes out, we still have, this is our target of where we need to land in terms of what money's available. This is what money's available. So anything that's changed, then there has to be an offset somewhere. It's a good reference point for you. I don't know if Michael or Reggie, you want to talk about the long range forecast?
So this is a city general fund long-range forecast for 2024 to 2030. Some of the revenue assumptions and the expenditure assumption we have are starting with the revenue assumptions. We have a 4% property tax revenue growth built in from 2026 to 2030, 2% sales tax revenue growth in 2026, and then it picks up to 4% in 2027 to 2030. Then we have a 3% BPU payment growth for 2026 to 2030, and a 6% water increase from 2026 to 2030. On the expenditure side for the assumptions, we have 3% personnel cost increase built in from 2026 to 2030, 4% contractual services and commodity increase for 2026 to 2030, and then also resume the capital schedule in 2026 to 2030. And what that means is in 2025, we did cut capital back in the city general fund, and then 3% other expense increase in 26 to 2030. So some of the key things about this model is you can see the budget that we did approve last summer for 2024. We were structurally imbalanced at $1.4 million. And what that means is we spent into the fund balance. We had more expenses in revenue, so we made that up by using some of the fund balance. But as we move over into 2025, this budget is structurally balanced, and we did not have to spend into fund balance. But our fund balance is below our 25% fund balance target. We're at about 23%. And as we look out into future years, on 2026 out to 2030, how the model is built right now, we are spending into fund balance each of those years. So starting in 2026, we're spending about $3.5 million of fund balance. And each year it kind of stays in that $3 million range until you get out to 2030, where it's about $2.7 million. And when you get out to 2030, our fund balance percentage does drop to 11%. So as we work the budget every year, one of the things we will be working to do is decrease that structural imbalance and balance the budget each year. So just kind of a view of what our work looks like out into the future. Current slide is a view of if we decided to go revenue neutral again. Assumptions are pretty much the same, except with property tax, we're assuming that there's no property tax growth. And again, we can see in 2025, we have a structurally balanced budget. And as we get out to 2026 and going out to 2030, we can see that the structural imbalance does grow, where we're in a range of like $3 million. On the other slide, where we have 4% revenue growth for property tax, we can see this jumps up to $4.8 million. And then as you get out into 2030, we can see it jumps up to about $8.3 million. And actually, our cash basis fund balance is in the red. And what that means is we wouldn't be able to approve a budget because we wouldn't have fund balance to spend into. And we would definitely need to do some work before we got to that point. Any questions about any of the long range slides? All right.
Commissioner Townsend.
Good evening. Just point of clarification again. So on slide 7, this is the revenue neutral forecast. And on 6, long range, that was not the assumption.
Yeah, so the one slide is assuming no property tax increase, and then the first slide was assuming like a 4% property increase each year.
Okay.
What that would allow us to do is, I mean, if we did want to cut some mills and we did have like a certain growth in property tax assessment, we could still cut mills and have like a 4% growth. So it's a conservative estimate.
While our, thank you, Budget Director and our CFO, while our commissioners are kind of gathering their thoughts in regards to questions, quick intermission here. I'd like to welcome the Chair of the Kansas Senate Tax Committee, Kansas Senator Tyson. She's here. And I think she had a little bit of clarity. Last night, I took note that there was a question that kind of went back and forth between some of our commissioners of what revenue neutral is and what it isn't. And Commissioner Davis had an idea of what it was, and I believe that Commissioner Lopez read something that related to revenue neutral. So I just thought it'd be fitting to have the individual from the state of Kansas that actually was a part of orchestrating revenue neutral from its inception to talk about it and how we got there. So Senator Tyson, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission. Glad to be here this evening. I had the pleasure of serving with the Honorable Tom Burrows, and it's great to see you in this capacity. He was part of that legislation and definitely helped get it across the line. Can you hear my, okay, sorry. So what happened, I'll give you a little bit of history on it. We keep hearing about property taxes, as you guys are too. That's one of the biggest issues that our constituents bring up to us. And so I am a software engineer. That's what I do for trade. I think very logically, math degree, computer science. And it wasn't happening. There was nothing going on at the state level with property taxes that we could see. So I formed a group of stakeholders across the state of Kansas. And we literally had meetings across the state trying to decide different ideas to work on property taxes. And what quickly rose to the top in that process was transparency. Most people didn't understand who was raising their property taxes and why they were increasing. And so that was one of the biggest issues. And if you'll remember, at the time, we had the property tax lid on there. And all that lid was doing was guaranteeing that every year we would get that 2% increase because they were socking the money away so that they wouldn't have to go to a vote of the people at a later date. Understandable. So revenue neutral, I started looking around at different states and saw model legislation that we could have used, that we used from Tennessee and Utah. And I later found out that Minnesota actually uses a very similar model. So there's different states. And what it is that the idea is that, you know, valuations go up, and we all know this. And in the past, I'll give you a quick example. I was at a meeting, one of my county commissioners, it's my neighbor, good friends, good people, very honest people. But he sits there and he goes, we didn't raise your property taxes this year. And I said, okay, I leaned back and kind of crossed my arms, and he knew I was going to say something. And I didn't say a word. Instead, he said, we lowered the mill levy. And then somebody yelled out in the audience, but I wrote a bigger check. And that's the bottom line here. That's where revenue neutral came about. So what it is local governments, and I made the motion to remove the lid when it went into effect. We completely removed the lid in this legislation, but it did a few things. It created the revenue neutral process. So in order for a governing body to increase property taxes to collect $1 more than the previous year, they have to go through a specific process, which allows the public to comment at the meetings, and then they vote at a public meeting. And that vote is a recorded vote. And there's also a letter involved, a notification. And on that letter, it tells you where the time, the date, and the location is of the meeting, which you guys are familiar with. Most of you have done that, have participated in the process. People say that it's not working. There's over 4,000 property taxing authorities in the state of Kansas. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. Over 4,000 property taxing authorities in the state of Kansas. Last year, it was reported 55% of those stayed revenue neutral. So it is working. It is working. Government is taking a deeper dive at their budgets and deciding whether to increase their property taxes on their constituents or not. It is working. The county that I'm from, Lynn County, they have stayed revenue neutral 3 years in a row. And nobody showed up at the meetings to speak. It wasn't because of an outcry of the public, but they knew that at the ballot box, there would be an outcry if they didn't listen to their constituents. So other counties, there's been different scenarios. Shawnee County, actually, prime example last year, I was at their meeting. I go around the state and actually watch these meetings because with my software background, when you put a system online, it's not a perfect system. So you try to tweak the system and make it as good as possible. And so I'm watching it. I'm watching how it works. Shawnee County last year did not follow the law. And because of that, when they exceeded revenue neutral, one of their constituents took them to BOTA, which the law says you can. It was challenged in BOTA, and BOTA ruled that they did not follow the law. They did not vote at the day that they called the meeting. And so instead of returning the money to their constituents, they've hired a high dollar lawyer in taking it to court, which is disappointing. I think it's going to hold up in court. We were very diligent in the law and methodical on passing this. I would stand for any questions or any other history that you want. You know, we did tweak it again this year. I do know the issue came up. It was based on, when you do revenue neutral, it was based on estimated valuations because that's what you have at the time of the budget process. Well, we were fully aware that there could be scenarios where actual valuations for a county are different than what the estimated was. So if your actual valuations come in lower than what and you decided to stay revenue neutral, the clerk can adjust that mill levy to where you collect the same dollar amount as the previous year. So it does allow a little bit of wiggle room to increase in that scenario. And that way, we had a community college, a previous senator was on the board and he asked for that provision to help. Another thing we did do is the letters will not be sent to any property that does not pay property taxes. So churches, nonprofits, IRB abatements, none of those would be receiving a letter this year for notice because they're not paying property tax. It was a county clerk's idea to help save money on the mailing. So far, the state has paid the mailing every year and they will pay it again this year. But there will come a time when local governments are most likely paying for that mailing. And you could ask your constituents too. I ask my constituents, how many of you want to pay for this mailing to receive this information? And almost always I get 100% hands raised. They want this information. They may not show up to the meetings, but they want to know, they want the opportunity. And what's really nice about this is a couple of things. The appraisers didn't come forward, but quietly, they really appreciate this legislation because they were getting blamed for property tax increases all the time. And now it's not. It's the governing body that's elected or appointed is who makes the vote to increase the property taxes. I know that puts a burden on you, but we just want transparency with government. And I know you guys all want that too. The other thing that that we do is, well, I'll just wait for your questions. I could talk about this. It's really good legislation. We had another piece of legislation in there that for your community, it would be important, I think. In Concordia, Kansas, she was really excited about it, the city manager. If somebody does normal maintenance on their home, like if you have to replace a roof because of a storm or paint or windows, that your valuation would not increase as a result of normal maintenance. That was in that same legislation. So we did quite a bit. And the other thing we did was we allowed county treasurers in that same piece of legislation to set up payment plans. We made it a formal, giving them the approval. Some of them were already doing it, but they can set up it's up to the county treasurer if they want to or not, a process, a payment process for individuals on their property taxes. We're trying, and if you guys have any ideas on improving the processing even more, I am all ears, because that's how we're going to get this thing solved, is by working together on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Stein.
Stites, District 7. Senator, thank you for the presentation. And one of really the question that I have that sticks out the most is the thought process behind the reduced time that we have to have a budget approved, right? I mean, it really puts puts us in a pickle, you know, to get a budget approved and the reduced, what is it, about 6 weeks quicker?
Well, you actually don't have to approve your budget at the same time you do the revenue neutral. Most governing bodies are choosing to. Those dates did not change. We actually laid the calendar out and aligned it as much as we possibly could with the budget process. We had PVD, well, actually a former PVD employee, and we took the budget calendar from clerks. We talked to county clerks, and I understand for the clerks, it is a burden, especially on years with even year elections. Odd year elections aren't as cumbersome, but they do have a lot of work going on at the same time. But that's why the dates, August 20th to September 20th. I think it allows for the meetings. Most people are pushing them to the beginning. I'm not sure why, but there is, I think it's about a month period that you can, don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at that for a couple of years. Oh, you do have it. But there is a pretty extensive time frame. Oh, okay. So there's two different dates. If you stay revenue neutral, there's one date that the budget process is due. And then if you do not stay revenue neutral, then it's the other date, October.
So it's about 6 weeks shorter time frame, right? If you decide to go. And what I'm saying is that with that reduced amount of time, you know, it makes a budget tougher to work, to massage the numbers and to get where we need to be. And with that being said, we're doing that on now a reduced time. So I'm not sure if there's something that we might be able to, if there's a real reason that they can't marry up and be the same time.
It was mainly because of the notices and the meetings, to be able to have that schedule within the meetings and the notices. Like I said, if you have suggestions on that, please email them to me or call me. I'm more than happy to look at it. As with any system, you guys we're all software users at some point. But as a developer and engineer of those types of applications, I do know that every system can be improved. Yeah.
Commissioner, thank you. Commissioner King.
Thank you, Mayor. You said there's 55% are going revenue neutral
Last year.
last year. Can I get a copy of that? Because
I don't have it. It was put out by another organization, and that's why I said it was reported 55%. But what we can do is every revenue neutral budget and vote is posted on the Department of Administration's website. And I would love for them to put together a summary or what's going on with the state. But instead, what I do is I go out and I just pick random counties and cities, and it's not like I have anything else. No, I'm kidding. I do check at this to see that it's being
the reason I
reported.
said that, the only one around here that went revenue neutral last year was Lewisburg, and the rest.
I actually have that on my presentation. I apologize that I wasn't here early enough to get that up. You can go out to the Department of Administration's website and you can see all the governing bodies for Wyandotte County, and you can see which ones held a revenue neutral hearing and which ones didn't. So it tells you who stayed. You know, there are some situations where they go ahead and send the notice. And then they actually decide not to go above revenue neutral. But if you do that, your vote is recorded as a yes vote to exceed revenue neutral.
And I'd like staff to come up with some answers and specifically of the municipalities our size. Because Lewisburg is not our size. It's a lot smaller. I think some of these other places are a lot smaller. And I want us to compare to the municipalities that are our same size. Thank you.
So I think 55% of an interesting number, and what, also there's school districts that remained revenue neutral. And I know that's controversial to some school districts, but there were some. It was, I think it was 2022 or either 2022 or 2023. It was a smaller county out west, and every taxing authority in that county stayed neutral.
Thank you, Commissioner and Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you. Senator, thank you for being here this evening and sharing with us the history of revenue neutral. Before revenue neutral, it was a tax lid.
It was.
And the tax lid had policy changes made in it that allow local unit of government to kind of work around that tax lid and work with it, but it got dismissed and replaced with revenue neutral. And when those policies go into place, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to see how you can tweak it and want to listen to what helps us. I might suggest, following Commissioner Stites' comment, that if a county chooses to go revenue neutral, and it's the first time they go revenue neutral, it's a challenge for them to understand the whole process. And I might ask that we find a way to extend that time frame under the revenue neutral guideline, that if it's the first time going revenue neutral, maybe the county has an additional time frame, even a couple of weeks or a month can be of benefit to allow new commissioners to understand the budget process, but also allow the local governments to work on the budget and get a more compact, deep dive budget. That would be one suggestion. And I know how difficult it is to meet timelines, but I'd like to publicly say thank you for taking my call last night.
Oh, absolutely.
I know how busy the legislature can be and how committed many legislators are. So I truly appreciate the fact that you took my call, addressed my questions, got me the resources I needed. But more importantly, I appreciate you being here in person to share with us the history of and the workings of the revenue neutral. Thank you.
And thank you. And I'll always take your calls. Yes.
There is some misconceptions or maybe questions as to, does revenue neutral as it's written under the law, and I know there were some modifications that you indicated, does it lock a municipality into, there's no secret. I've been trying to roll the red carpet out for the Chiefs and the Royals to come to Wyandotte County. There could be a potential for added revenues, or maybe the individual that just says, I love Wyandotte County and I want to build that house. How does additional revenues impact that? And does the legislation account for those types of factors?
That is a great question, and it does, because of the way the current property tax process is. Property taxes do not come on the roll in the middle of the year. It's January 1st when they come on the roll. So if you decide to stay revenue neutral for 2020, for this year, and then the property taxes that would be on the roll January 1st. So any of those would come on and you would be discussing revenue neutral for the 2025 with those on there. That I don't see it as a problem. I double checked with the revisors and with research, and I think that's an excellent question. And they said that the timing should not be an issue at all for when property actually comes on the roll and starts paying taxes. So you would be able to collect taxes from those outfits if you decided so. I was told during debate on the Chiefs Stadium that if they do come to Kansas, they will never pay property taxes. So I can't, that's more up to Wyandotte County than, yeah. But I do know that that's a whole nother issue if you guys would like to get involved at some point. IRB and property tax abatements does impact the rest of the county. And there's some counties that use those quite frequently, others just, they don't have any. But it does impact the community because as you give, we did have legislation this year that if a business or somebody was given property tax relief, no exempted, then the county or whomever that governing body was would remain revenue neutral for 1 year so that everybody in the community could reap the benefit that that business was getting to. At least, I mean, they wouldn't get an exemption, but they would not see a property tax increase for that year. I'll pick on Johnson County a little bit. I think it was last year, they gave a $34 million tax abatement, turned out to be a Chinese company. But if you look, they did increase their mill levies. They did not stay revenue neutral. So as they were giving one company an abatement, their residents and longtime constituents suffered a property tax increase. So to me, it's not something that should be micromanaged at the state level. I think the local level makes those decisions better, but it is something for conversation. So, and if you do get the Chiefs and the Royals, bravo. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you have some inside baseball on that.
I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner-
Townsend. I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Senator, for attending. My apologies for not being able to be there in person, colleagues. I do want to get some clarification, and I do appreciate you being here and just providing your perspective. So you had said that new businesses that are developed or their incentive is no longer active would pay property taxes. For the governing entity, would they see a net positive or a net increase in property tax revenue if they went revenue neutral after those businesses that received incentives or those new businesses have paid property taxes?
I'm not sure I understand the timing of the question. The new growth?
Yeah.
So new growth is not excluded in revenue neutral.
So you were saying that even with us adjusting the mill to arrive at the same amount of property tax revenue as the previous year, that would still allow for economic growth through property taxes.
So I think an example might be a better way to answer this. So January 1st, would that business be online or would they be in part of the assessment that the appraisers put together for the county?
It would really depend, but for this scenario, let's say yes.
Then the mill levy would be calculated off that with those values. And so the mill levy established, the revenue neutral mill levy would already be established. And yes, you would be collecting those dollars.
So we would be collecting those dollars. Would there be a net increase in property tax revenue?
Not if you vote to stay revenue neutral. It would be the same dollar amount as the previous year.
Thank you so much. I
But
think that
it's not, I think you're trying, it's convoluted is the new growth is already established in that equation because it is part of the valuation. Is the clerk or the appraiser here by any chance?
No.
The appraiser? No. So, so the appraiser, and I had that on as part of my slides, I apologize, but it shows the valuation for the county and the appraised value. And the appraiser turns over that number to the clerk, and the clerk does the calculation to come up with the mill levy. So those new dollars that you're saying are part of that equation. They are being collected. So you're not losing that money. It's part of the equation. And what that new money does is it actually helps your homeowners and your businesses that have been here for years, and they keep saying they're going to see reductions in their property taxes as a result of new growth. They never see that. Well, now, since you're collecting more money from different resources, or the same amount of money from different resources, they are going to see a decrease in their property taxes. Did I explain that well enough?
My question was not necessarily whether or not there would be a decrease in the property tax bill. My question is if there would be a net increase in the revenue. And I think what you're saying is there would be more players in the game, more people to contribute to the property tax coffers, and therefore that would be the growth, that would be the increase. It would be in the decrease for the other property tax owners. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because revenue neutral means the same amount as the previous year. The same amount of dollars, yes, as the previous year.
But the arrival at that would be different if you added additional property taxpayers. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that because you have more people paying into the pool than some people that had been paying in for years won't see the increase that they would have seen if that new property wouldn't have come online.
Gotcha. Okay. But for our sake, for on the municipality side, there wouldn't be additional revenue that we would see. We wouldn't have funding for our police. We wouldn't have funding for our sheriff. We wouldn't have funding for our fire department, what have you. We would still have the same amount of revenue.
No,
From property
you would
taxes.
have the same amount of dollars from property taxes. It does not
Yes.
impact sales tax. It
Yeah.
does not impact other money revenues that are coming in. It's only property taxes that you're remaining revenue neutral on. And sales taxes, we all know it. The coffers have gone up considerably the last few years. It's a result of inflation. I give a very simple example. I mean, the state coffers, we've seen this benefit. 5 years ago, you would buy a gallon of paint and you'd pay $30 for that gallon of paint. And for simplicity, we'll say 10% sales tax. Okay, so $3. So you paid $33 for the gallon of paint. Well, local government didn't increase the sales tax, state didn't increase the sales tax, but that gallon of paint is now $40. So you go to the store to buy it, and instead of $33, you're paying $44 with a 10% sales tax. So your sales tax went up $1 without anybody increasing taxes. That's why they call it the hidden tax on inflation. And we have seen inflation a few years, and we're going to see it again this year. And so the coffers continue to grow with the sales tax increases. So it does allow you the flexibility to stay revenue neutral with your property taxes when we are looking at certain inflation scenarios.
Gotcha. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Administrator.
Thank you, Senator, for coming tonight. I guess to really make sure we understand the answer to Commissioner Davis's question, you do get to capture the assessed valuation of new growth, but it's when you're doing all the appraisals. And even if that increases, you're still, property tax revenue is capped.
It's neutral from the
It's
previous year.
neutral. So you do experience it, but then the benefit to the taxpayer is you see that reduced mill rate and their tax bill goes down because you now threw this extra in there.
So, and it's very confusing. I don't want to mislead people because, you may have property that your valuation increased and your neighbors went down for some reason. So based off the mill levy, the math, you personally may see an increase in your property taxes. But overall, the county will not collect $1 more than they did the previous year. So a majority of people, it will be a tax. It will be neutral. Not a tax increase, hopefully a tax cut. If you bring the chiefs on, I think it would be a major tax cut for some.
Well, it's also great for you to be here today because as we've done the last two budget processes, we've had a re-education of the whole tax system at the local level. And as you probably are aware, we are very strong participants with the state on star bonds. And so when you say we would see an increase in sales tax revenue, that's one of the frustrations we hear from our public is because we have so many star bond projects, that growth in sales tax goes to pay the star bond, not come into our coffers. So it's good to hear what you're talking about revenue neutral about, and we're going to have talks after we finish the budget as we look at our economic development approach in the future and how do we use incentives, how do we partner with the state and star bonds, is that, that's our investment to that project for jobs and economic activity and all that. But that's our investment to start that business or business activity. Hopefully it's generating the return to pay off those bonds, hopefully earlier than 20 years. But we're strong participants in that. And that's, I think, another frustration that we hear from our folks is got all these growth out west. All that growth out west is in a star bond. And so we don't really see it in our coffers till after those bonds are paid off.
Yeah.
It's good laboratory.
I'm from a small rural county and it's kind of a habit for us. We really like having the county on the license plates. And one of the things when we're up here spending our money in Wyandotte County, which we do, and Johnson County, I look at the license plates to see. And what was interesting, one of the slides I had for this evening, it was a little bit of trivia, but your sales tax pull factor is not as high as I thought it would be for Wyandotte County. Johnson County is extremely high. Wyandotte, it tells you that people are not staying in the county to make most of their purchases. So, I was raised buy local, shop local. And there really is something to that. And I don't know, maybe you want to start a campaign to educate people when they shop in Wyandotte County, it does help your property taxes. So,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Thank you, Administrator. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. Melissa Bynum at Large District 1, and thank you, Senator, for taking time to come and visit with us. And I'm appreciative that you've done that because in my mind, you've confirmed my understanding of what revenue neutral is, and the example I use when I discuss it with other people is very simple. We collected $100 million last year in property tax. So by voting to be revenue neutral, we're going to collect 100 million this year.
Mhm.
Potentially, philosophically, and this is where I'd be curious of your philosophy, potentially 100 million next year and 100 million the year after that and 100 million the year after that.
You're not locked in.
I understand that we're not locked in, but I'm curious about the philosophy of the revenue neutral rule, but I'll let you circle back around to that. What I understand you to have said, and I want to say it back to make sure I'm right. When we have an Amazon logistics center here that potentially is coming back onto our tax roll in a year or two
They'll be gone.
at whatever amount that would be. And let's assume it doesn't leave and it pays its fair share of property tax in a year or two. It just gets added to the total of 100 million, which means when you have 20 people paying 100 million rather than just 10, everybody gets to pay less.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate that concept. Where we have frustration is, as you've already expressed, it leaves whatever other revenue sources we have available to us to make up whatever growth for our community we're trying to create, whether that's parks, sidewalks, sewers, paving roads, paying firefighters, whatever it is, we will not see growth in the property tax amount, which means for us, we're looking, our three-legged stool is property tax, sales tax, and a payment in lieu of taxes. What have you seen other taxing entities do? Our projections tonight,
So you actually
the-
have other resources. I didn't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry, but you do have other revenue sources.
correct, a
have a
variety
fuel
of
tax.
licensing and permits and things like that, that really contribute, it looks like, a rough calculation of those additional revenues based on our documents for tonight are 2, 5, 7, 10, 14 million. So the the sales tax growth that our CFO is bringing us as an estimate appears to be from 24 to 25 appears to be right under $3 million. So I'm curious what you have seen other local taxing entities do with their other revenue sources for the growth that they need in their local communities. I just am curious what you've seen.
So, and I'm going to have to research. I didn't realize that pilot programs were more than just wind turbines.
I'm sorry.
Payment in lieu of,
threw
no, I know
out
what
some-
payment in lieu of.
Correct. I threw that jargon around for us.
No, I know
comes
what
on
it
the
is. I just
utility
didn't know
bill.
that you had the ability to negotiate exempting property taxes for a payment in lieu of
The
taxes.
particular pilot that I was referencing is something that we talk about a lot here. It's a payment in lieu of taxes that our utility ratepayers pay on their water and their electricity. And that comes over to the unified government to fund our services. So those are the three main revenue sources that we manage here at the local level. So
No, that's good to know. And what's interesting is I've seen it run the gamut. People are very frustrated and upset about their property taxes. And the local governments, many of them are listening and trying to address that issue. And one of the, probably, I would say, the most innovative ideas that I have seen in the state so far is Chanute, Kansas. Are you guys aware of this? Chanute has their own utility. And so they removed all mill levy for their city. 0 mill. They do not collect property taxes anymore. And instead of doing that, they put a slight increase on the usage or sales tax for their utility. I'm anxious. It's been, I think 1.5 years now. And the city manager, I told him I would be coming back because I called him when he implemented this. It was extremely innovative. And I want to see how it's working down there. So I will be visiting with him on that. But there are people that are thinking, I guess, the terminology outside the box. We're trying to be very innovative. In fact, myself, I've got a spreadsheet that I'm putting together. You know, if we move this over here, how does this impact? We've got to start getting innovative and really asking ourselves what government is for. You know, there's a Senator Schallenberger throws out a number. I haven't seen it yet. I need to look up the resource. But Kansas is very high for government compared to other states. And so, you know, I choose to live here. Most of us do. I love Kansas. And it's home. I'm proud to be back. We did live out of state for a while. And I just want to make this the best possible state for all of us to be able to have the opportunity to thrive. And the more people have in their pockets for disposable spending, they are to the limit. I mean, you guys may have seen it, but going door to door, they are literally to the limit. Individuals are being taxed out of their homes. They're trying to decide whether they pay their property taxes, buy food, or pay for medicine. And I mean, these are people that have their homes paid for. It's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. So that's why I'm spending so much time and effort on this. We really do need to figure out the best possible system to run our governments and to be able to allow our constituents to thrive. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I don't, I don't think anybody here needs to be convinced. We had a unanimous vote to
stay
go revenue
neutral.
neutral.
Congratulations, you guys. I applaud you. I mean, that is a massive undertaking. It's not easy. That tells me that you dug into your budget and you worked hard for your constituents.
We're trying. It's not easy.
And
And that's why I was asking.
And you said about staying every year revenue neutral. I don't think anybody has that expectation. Part of the history I didn't give on this program that I modeled this legislation after in Tennessee and Utah, it had been in place for over 25 years in both states. One of them was over 30 and the other was in 25. I didn't take this lightly. It's easier to take a wheel that's working and improve on it than to try and reinvent. So that's what I did through this process.
I hope you take the questions in the spirit they're asked.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I constantly find myself, so we might have a side conversation with someone who says, well, Texas doesn't have taxes. And I always think, well, how do they pay for their roads? There's got to be revenue from somewhere to pay for certain things that we may all agree a government should do, like build roads. And so that's why I was asking the earlier question. I'll be interested in Chanute, for example. I'll be interested in what other Kansas specifically local entities have done when we're holding our property tax at a steady dollar amount, possibly year over year, possibly not, but at least for 2 years in a row. So that's why I was asking that question.
Mhm. I think it's up to each community and each governing body. Like I said, the county that I live in, they have been revenue neutral for 3 years now. My husband just told me on the phone that when I was driving up here, we got our revenue neutral letter. They are not remaining revenue neutral for the 4th year. They had sent out, Lynn County is not. So what happened, Lynn County was revenue neutral for 2 years. And last year, I think it was a mistake, but it happened, it wasn't a big deal. They sent out the letter to exceed revenue neutral. Okay, but they had stayed neutral 2 years in a row, the county. Not one person showed up to the revenue neutral meeting, even me. I did watch it online, but we thought, they've worked hard to stay neutral. Well, during the meeting, they did vote to exceed, but when they came in with their actual budget, they ended up staying neutral. Now, the vote is recorded as they voted to increase, but they did stay neutral 3 years in a row. Now, this year, they sent out the letter to exceed. So I have a feeling they will exceed this year. To me, I think Kansans are very reasonable. I know I was born in the Northwest, Norton. I was raised in Glasgow, went to school in Lawrence a couple years, Dodge City, all over the state, live in the eastern part of the state now. And to me, Kansans are very reasonable people. They understand it takes money to run government. What they don't want to see is the waste, especially when they're trying to make ends meet. And right now, it's pretty tough on our constituents.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane, and then Commissioner Lopez.
Do you think the state's going to go revenue neutral this year?
The state is not under a revenue neutral obligation, which we tried to change that. And we tried to, the state property taxes, that was another chart I had. So the state collects 1.5 mil in property tax that we actually use. It's 1 mil for regions and 0.5 mil for buildings, facilities such as Osawatomie State Hospital, School of the Deaf. So it's increased, and we tried, I actually tried to get rid of it. There's no sense that should be on the books because it's 1.5 mil. It could come out of the state general fund easily. And it would be a property tax cut for all of your constituents, including on vehicles, 1.5 mil, if we would get rid of that. So you will see that legislation again. I will continue to try to get rid of that. The other one is the 20 mil. The state, that's a bookkeeping number. It's for the K through 12 schools. That money goes to the state, and then every penny of it is returned to the school district that it came from. So that 20 mil currently does not stay revenue neutral. And the Representative Smith, the chairman for the House Tax Committee, and Representative Jennings, whom I miss, he had a really good idea on this. As the valuations increase, that 20 mil should decrease. And so there was an attempt to do that. We passed that in at least 2, possibly 3 bills this year that were all vetoed. The final bill did not include that language to decrease it, but I do know that that will be worked on next year too. Yeah, so we're not trying to hold you to a different standard by any means. It's the state doesn't really function off property taxes. It's mainly a function of local government and K through 12. And I noticed you guys, when I was looking at this, the library budget, not to pick on libraries, I love libraries, they serve a great purpose. But if you look at the Shawnee County or Topeka, last time I looked, their budget's $24 million. So that's a substantial property. I think they get about, well, last time I looked, it was $16 million from property taxes. So, you know, we just have to look at what we're doing for our resources in our community and where our priorities are. And I'm not picking on the libraries. My mom was on the library board, my mother-in-law. We love libraries, but it is a number that you can see easily on that letter that most people didn't even realize that that is a portion of their property taxes. So that's another thing that I started to mention. The revenue neutral letter, the nice thing about it is that they see that the county isn't the biggest portion of their taxes, their property taxes. They do see that it is the schools and other taxing authorities that are making up that number. And the state's portion, we did put that on the letter too, so that that would be obvious also how much you're paying into the state on the 1.5 mil.
Commissioner Lopez, District 6. Hey, comparing our city to other cities in Kansas, especially smaller cities like Chanute and other things like that, is it fair to compare our ratios, not our size, but our ratios on this?
Comparing what? I was just giving you
expenditures, revenue, expenditures, things like that. You know, there might be, like, I'm a small business owner. There's other companies that are a lot bigger than me, a lot bigger than me. But at the end of the day, we pretty much have the same ratios.
It depends on what you're comparing. Numbers are intriguing. That's obviously where I like to concentrate. And I made a comment about Amazon. They may stay here. I just watched what went on in Southeast Kansas. As soon as those abatements, property tax abatements were up, they left. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's,
Yeah.
and then we bring in somebody else and start the whole thing over again. And we're stuck with the flipping the bill. And that's what I'm trying to, like, if we brought in a big outfit with a lot of paying, high paying or even above average, high paying jobs with no tax abatement, that would bring the mill levy down, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and another way, since I'm in technology, telecommuting, you know, if we make our communities the great places that they are to raise families and to bring people back, onshore development instead of offshore development. I've been talking about that for years. You know, that's a whole nother issue, but we do need to be competitive in those ways. And I think there's, you know, I think you guys are with me. I love Kansas. I really do. We all choose to be here. We could all live elsewhere. And working together, you know, what I suggest, I just spoke to a group this afternoon. You know, let's form some pocket groups and brainstorm. Put everything out on the table, come up with some ideas that are innovative. And that's what we did for the property taxes in order to get we had 80 provisions in our brainstorming session as a result of, and we did a weighted matrix. So we actually put logistics to deciding what we would try to pass into law. We actually got over 30 provisions passed. Most people wouldn't realize it, but simple things like trying to improve your appeals process. And I mean, there's so many ways the system can be improved. So we're going to continue those meetings. If you guys, like I said, have any ideas or input to help improve the process, we need to do that. And maybe we do that for K through 12 education, for local governments. I mean, you know, dream big. We can do it. We can achieve it.
Thank you, Mayor. Evelyn Hill, District 4. Thank you, Senator, for being with us and answering all of our questions. I just want to know when it comes back to an extension for turning in the revenue neutral budget, is it an opportunity in other communities that have approached the state as far as an extension?
That's a good question. I have not heard any, but I will look into it and do some research on it. I know the schedule is not easy. One of the major inputs on that schedule was the county clerks. And we did talk to the appraisers and then the budget process, and I can't remember, but there was, it's the school budgets. That's what it is. The school is on a different schedule than the local governments, the county and the city. So we had to accommodate all of that, not just one group. So that's what lies, there was the issue, trying to come up with a better schedule. Yeah. But we will definitely take a look at it.
Okay, any more questions from our commissioners? Thank you, Senator Tyson, for your time. It was valued and appreciated. I know you traveled far to get here. So we really appreciate you coming and answering questions. Hopefully our commissioners and our public and our staff may have gotten a little bit more clarity with revenue neutral through this Q&A. So thank you so much. And I know that you can reach my office commissioners. We've got a direct connect, our Commissioner Burrows as well.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the invitation. I appreciate it. Don't hesitate. Good luck, you guys. I really do applaud you. I'm going to be singing your praises. In fact, I'm going to reach out to a few people. This needs to be known statewide, how hard you guys worked to remain revenue neutral. That's a major win for the state. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, that takes us back to our CFO and our budget director gave us a presentation on kind of just where we're at on the dynamics of the city financials of the unified government budget projections for 2025. Just I know we're involved in questioning and really intently listening to the revenue neutral ordinance or statute from the state. And so, but getting back on track, I guess, know that Reggie left it open for questions, and I know our CFO has questions as well as our administrator, so this is that time. Well, okay. Whoop. Commissioner Stites.
So again, Stites District 7. So there were some things that we asked for last night to be brought forward tonight. Did we get those? And one of them I know was the question, and I can go through my notes, was regarding the Plaza at the Speedway TIF and also the other taxing. Did we get those?
So we'll have, the answers to those questions will be short following. We do have, some, I guess, takeaway homework for you. These are the questions that were asked throughout the process by commissioners. So you've been asking for, different kinds of information. There were questions asked about why are the sales taxes different? So it's organized in a way the budget team worked really hard to put this together. It asks the question and gives you some background and information. So you'll get something just like this. We went over the list of questions today, but because we were preparing for the county discussion, just a general discussion, that'll be forthcoming. So it'll be probably tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, so tomorrow we'll get that to you.
Thank you for that answer to that question, but the TIF, what's the, that'll also be an answer on that regarding that one? That's
Yes, it is.
okay, thank you.
I think Wendy can answer that now if you'd like.
Actually, if the question's on the distribution on the Plaza of the Speedway? Well, let me get to your specific question, because I do actually have that specific answer. So on Plaza at the Speedway, the question was what happens to any excess funds that are remaining when the TIF closes? Yes?
That's correct. Could we start with what's that number?
I didn't bring that, Commissioner, but
Ballpark?
I really don't know. I know. how much-
2.4 million?
So that's the average over a period of years, but next year it'd be closer to 1 million for the city and county, but that doesn't include the state number. So with the state number, and that's bigger, but we'll get you the whole pro forma.
Okay.
But in terms of any excess, Edwardsville and Bonner Springs did not participate. They opted out of Plaza at the Speedway. So any excess that would be remaining in that fund would come back to the taxing districts that participated. So and we can provide that information to you too. But I just wanted, I know there was some questions about that one in particular, but Wendy might.
Yeah, and to be clear on that, I'm not, so I do represent 3 cities.
Yeah.
So I wasn't asking
Like-
for Bonner and Edwardsville. I also represent KCK. So,
realize I'm
it's
just
important
saying
for KCK also. So I appreciate that and I look forward to getting those numbers back. Thank you.
This is Winnie Green with Legal. That's the only thing I was going to add to it is when the actual obligations of that district are paid off, it's business as usual. Any tax that is collected goes right back to the city to use as it sees fit.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, in Topeka, when you testify, you have somebody for and somebody against. It would have been nice to have somebody that didn't necessarily like the star bonds to come talk. So we'd have both sides instead of one, or not star bonds, I'm sorry, revenue neutral. Ellen, you're talking about where I'm at. Anyway, it would have been nice to have somebody that didn't necessarily like revenue neutral so we could get both sides of the issue instead of just one side.
I think that was you. I agree. It wasn't so, her comments wasn't so much to be a proponent as to just bring clarity of the law as it is now. I think we kind of went along that route of, because she did craft it. Obviously she supports it, but it was just to bring clarity as to what's in the law. So there's no confusion. It wasn't so much to say, at least for me, revenue neutral is a great thing and you got to do it. There's no other options. It was basically just to say, here's the law, here's what's in it, and then answer you all's question.
And thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate that, but I would like to see the Wichita, Topeka, Lawrence, what they're doing. Because like I said, the only municipality around here last year was Lewisburg that went revenue neutral. So you can say that 55% did it, but are they this size of municipality? And I know that I guess the community college went revenue neutral. So there was some other folks that did it. I had one of them shoot me a comment about he didn't necessarily like it, but anyway, I mean, there's two sides to everything. And I just want to make sure everyone knows, there's this side and that side, and we'll meet in the middle somewhere.
I mean, I can play the devil's advocate. I mean, everybody knows I've been a proponent of it, but I'm not a proponent of it to take away or harm the unified government. Me being a proponent is just being community driven, listening to the community and saying, hey, this is our priority. That's what community driven means to me. That's what I ran on. That's why I'm here. And the number one issues everywhere I go to this day is lower my property taxes, do something with my BPU. That's what I've been working on predominantly most of the time, me and my team with you all. There is an adverse side to that, and we're seeing that. Revenue neutral is forcing communities to streamline, to cut, and that can have an adverse impact on services, as we know, and we're seeing. It could have an adverse impact depending on how deep you cut or you have to cut on employees. So I applaud this commission for making the standard of no layoffs, COLA increases, so our employees are protected and not adversely impacted like I was over the years. 2008, I didn't mention that last night, was another year. I went through that all over again. And I know that Dennis Hayes, the administrator at the time, had to do some innovative things. I know that there were a lot of employees, top level, that were given early out packages that were cost-saving measures. But our administrators told us, because of the timeline that's been put on us, that just really wasn't an option this year to get something to you all that really outlined probably some innovative things. But what I can say, you got to run governments, and you run governments in our country through revenues. Unfortunately, a lot of that comes through taxes in some form, one way or another. That's just the reality. But I think that it's incumbent, and I take the revenue neutral law is you can put a pause because you don't get a tax decrease, but you can put a pause and you can say, hey, if we're asking our residents to tighten their belt because of a bad economy, let's see what we can do and put a pressure point on that, and maybe not give them a tax cut, but this year prevent a burdensome tax increase and see how we can streamline government, see what innovative ideas are out there, like Senator Tyson talked about, and see how we can apply that moving forward. So maybe in years to come, we don't have to have extreme property tax increases. But I can say for our town, just based on my experience, and I mentioned it last night, year after year property tax increase is not sustainable. You can look at the distressed zip codes in our town. You can look at you can go back historically, and history is starting to repeat itself with individuals leaving our town. Eventually, and I went to Detroit year before last, and I talked to their city leaders and talked to a lot of their community activists, and they have not fully recovered from bankruptcy. But I can tell you what happened as a result. The employees suffered the most. The employees, and not just the current employees, but the retired employees as well, their pensions were gutted. I've never seen anything like it. The state had to come in and do some really drastic things. I think what revenue neutral is saying, especially for our county, I see it as an opportunity for us to avoid falling over that cliff when we know we have those financial challenges, and just try and be a leaner government that provides the optimum level of services that we can. I'm not saying that revenue neutral is a fix-all, but what I can say, when our residents say and demand this from us, this is just my opinion and my position, and where I stand as an elected official, is we try and meet reasonable, and I like to say reasonable and responsible expectations, because we can't give our community everything just because they say they want it. We still have a government to run. We got to look at the entirety of our community, and we got to make sure that we're a community that for the long game can be a community that people want to live, play, and raise families. And sometimes everybody's not going to be happy with the decision this body's make. But I do believe, and I appreciate Senator the senator, what she said, at least this year, we're making hard decisions and it's showing our constituents that we did listen. And I think that's all they want. They just want to know we tried. And whatever this body does in other commissions and mayors do in subsequent years, that's really their purview. But I'm proud of the fact that our staff, our CFO and our budget director and our administrator under his leadership in a short period of time protected our employees and really without a lot of input from us. And I know we had little work groups and things like that, but not a deep dive. And I know we're going to get to that because that was a request from Commissioner Bynum last night. Really presented something to us that is going to sustain a certain level of essential services that's not going to diminish the quality of life of our residents. And to me, that's what's most important. So on the flip side, yeah, there are pros and cons to this, but I've said it. I don't believe revenue neutral, and the senator said it is not something that is sustainable over time. But I think what it allows is it gives local municipalities the option to maybe do revenue neutral, not do revenue neutral. But what I can say, and I said it last night, and I've heard mayors my entire career here say it, and we've really got to take this seriously. We've got to expand the tax base here in Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas. We can't continue to give away the farm with incentives. We've got to have responsible incentives where these individuals that want to be good neighbors pay their fair share of taxes to broaden that tax base. That has to happen. Or we're going to keep having these problems. And we've got to have a hook. I know Commissioner Lopez mentioned it, and I propose to this body to think about it. If someone wants a huge, I don't care if we give somebody 100% tax abatement, but guess what you're going to do? If you want 100% tax abatement, you got to guarantee based on your business in that proposal, we want you to stay 5 or 10 years. So our community can recoup something, and that shows that you want to be a good neighbor and you're not going to be hopping around city to city looking for best corporate welfare deals, and you're not committed to these communities at all. Soon as you get your deal and the sand runs through and the clock runs out, then you run into another city asking for the exact same thing. It hurts communities. It hurts our hardworking residents. And I say we do a better job of not just holding those individuals who want to be here accountable, but these individuals that are delinquent on their taxes, hold them accountable. We have a high tax delinquency rate. We need to go after these folks. They've got to pay their fair share, especially those individuals that can pay it. And so those are just some of the ideas that I'm throwing out at you. But I think I'm here to work. I've said it from day one. I'm a collaborator. I want to work politics aside. I know we're elected officials. We're in politics. Politics comes into play in this. But I think now, especially where we're at today, I challenge this commission, throw the politics aside. Let's work together and get the job done for the people of Wyandotte County, because that's what they want us to do. And they're going to appreciate the fact that we at least tried. And I've seen that because there was a 9-0 vote. And nothing against you, Mike. You probably would have voted too if you had been here that night and at least heard those stories. And because they're heart-wrenching. And it does make you feel bad because we're here because we care about people. We're not here to hurt people. We're here to improve people's lives. And I know our employees, because I was one of them, are here because they care. They signed up to be public servants because they want to improve the quality of life of the residents, because they have to live here too. And so I say all that to mean is that I think our residents know, like I said it last, they know we can't solve all their problems, but they know that with a little change in direction or priorities, that we can do better. And that's all they want to see. So thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. And with that being said, can someone tell me in this budget process, if it's a 9-inning game, what inning are we in? It seems like we're running around in circles and talking the same thing to each other when we know exactly everybody agrees with the problem. We need to get down to the nuts and bolts and give our staff, and so they can pursue and get this thing done quicker, and especially for the citizens. They deserve better too. So if someone can tell me about what inning we're in, and let's start addressing the tough questions if that's what we need to do, and let's get answers. And if we need to vote on each individual thing, then I think we can get it done a little bit quicker. So if anybody can tell me what inning we're in, I'd appreciate it.
We're scheduled to have you vote on a budget next Thursday. And that tells you what inning you're in, driven by the calendar that revenue neutral gave us. So time's not a luxury, but if we're going to do other things, we got to do it smarter and very, very, very focused. I commend the departments for the work that they did to get to me the information to craft a recommended budget for you that meets the rules of revenue neutral. I know that last night we heard a couple departments, Mayor read from the DA, the sheriff voiced his frustration basically because most of his budget is variable costs. How can I predict? Depends on the customers, the amount of customers he has to deal with, and things like that. But I am going to say here, a budget is a policy guide that you pass. Yes, we treat it very strictly to meet certain statutory requirements, but every year we do budget amendments to deal with emergencies, things that come up that we never thought about when we crafted the budget the year before. So understand that a budget, even though it's passed, is more or less a fluid document. Any formal changes still have to come here. And the only thing that revenue neutral said is we can't get more property tax revenue. If we get more revenue during the year, it opens the door for other things for us to do if you see fit. But also as we commit to a budget guide, one thing that has been missing in my time here is regular financial reporting to you. And Dr. Knieven is committed to get back to monthly variance reports to the ED&F committee and quarterly reports at a commission meeting. So that's going to be starting very, very soon. We're done with this transfer from Kenyatta to the new system. We're in the new system now. And therefore, we don't have an excuse. So we will be getting that out to you. I also want to thank you for listening to our presentations, because over the years since the recession back in late 2000s, we started a habit by balancing the budget by dipping into reserves every single year. We got those reserves because we weren't fully hired. And therefore, we continually balance the budget. And when you dip into reserves and make it regular, you enjoy that increased appetite to provide more services to the public, or different higher quality services, whatever that extra money can provide to the community. But as we've seen in both presentations, to remind us last night and tonight, we're looking at a 20-ish level at the city, 7 to 12%, depending on what we're looking at the county level, and the county level is abysmally low. And you need to get those reserves, not just for a rainy day fund so we can deal with something that's unexpected, but it's also looked at from the bond market on how risky you are. Risky you are, the more expensive it is to borrow money to provide public services or infrastructure that we would use those monies for. So it's good to continually have that discussion on the importance of reserves. And we do have a lot more homework to do. That's one of the reasons why we've appreciate your support of our effort to do priority-based budgeting. Because some of the stuff that you heard the senator say today, that revenue neutral does is open the door to reinforce the need for governments to re-examine itself and what services are really important to the residents. And when you look at prioritizing all the services that the departments provide and monetizing them, when you are looking, it provides a better context when we are going to be discussing with you, how do we reallocate resources without necessarily going back to the taxpayer? And so that's where priority-based budgeting is going to kick in right after we get in more an energetic approach after we finish this budget, is that's the benefit that that's going to have. And so it never goes away. We always have to do annual budgets. We have to be the best public stewards possible, which means we have to continually re-examine the priorities and funding levels and the investment ask from our public. So I know there's a lot of frustration that revenue neutral had foisted on us. Rarely do I use that word in public, foist. It came out. It does provide us a benefit. I said last night, a possible reset, relook at what's important of the services means we may have to take a different viewpoint on how we provide services, what services we actually do provide, and at what level. But we didn't have these contexts before. We didn't have these deep discussions about reserves, the need for a debt management policy, this idea that refocusing on what the revenue that we get from our public is. They're giving us that money to provide services for them. It's not us to do our work only. We need to keep that focus as the primary focus. And they're asking what we hear from the private sector. What's the return on investment? What's the value I get for my tax dollar? And that's what a budget does. This is what we're doing for you, public. So it's a guide. There will be probably asked during the year about amendments, but it's about using revenue that's not from property taxes, because we can't do that. So to Commissioner Burns' question, I get this is the question for him and his colleagues to talk about. What do you need? The mayor talked about last night doing a deeper dive. Can you do that in a week? I think you got to think realistically on that. We'll do what we can for you to help craft a budget that you're comfortable with under revenue neutral. But we got to get realistic about time. That's another part of Commissioner Burns' question. Where are we in the game? We're toward the end. And the 15th, there's no extra innings after the 15th. So help us help you. What do you need from us? More than what you have before you, in your binder.
Thank you, Administrator. Commissioner Hill, and I believe
Thank you, Mayor. And
Johnson.
thank you, Mr. Johnston. I'm kind of where Commissioner Burns is. So you said, what do we need? I have a couple questions. So I'm just going to throw them out there, and then if it's going to be scheduled another time, another day to answer it, that's fine. Here's the first one. We have some long-term interim positions, and I'm just wondering, when will those positions be solidified, or when will that person be replaced with a permanent person, or when will they become solidified in that position? And will that include full benefits? That's one question. Another question has to do, I talked to the Director of Public Works today on some of the roads here in Wyandotte County, and he listed out, there was a schedule on the website that kind of tells when and what the roads would be redone. And then another question I asked was, what's the product that we use for these roads? Is it cheaper? Why do the roads just look and feel so bumpy? Why aren't they smooth? I didn't ask those specific questions, but he was nice enough and kind enough to kind of give me the wherewithal on that question. I'd like to know where that is in the budget and how do we handle that? And then my third, I'm sure there's many, many more, but I saw where Willa Gill was going to get $68,000 from the UG budget to relocate. And so I'd love to hear more about that whole discussion also.
Very quickly on the Willa Gill thing, we normally have provided Willa Gill a annual stipend to provide the services that they provide. Well, you see the 68,000, and that comes from the general fund. And what you see on there at 68,000 is the $68,000 remaining from the general fund. It's not new. But we've realized that they are eligible to receive CDBG funding. So they'll get the same stipend, but from two different funds instead of one separate fund.
Thank you.
It's not for the move,
Okay,
okay? It's just what we've given them every year.
okay. And the other two questions will be answered eventually.
Well, those are the quality of the asphalt and all that's all part of the discussion that Public Works has with their staff and with their engineering consultants on what's best for the road, what category of the road, how much traffic does it have. It's all included in their decisions on what type of material that they use there. So that's incorporated in the cost on your CIP portion of the budget.
I saw that, and I saw the street maintenance piece on there
Yeah.
also.
So that's, and the first question was,
The long-term interim position.
that's one of the things that we're having trouble with is filling positions. We've talked with this body before, some of the challenges that we've heard with applicants we'd love to hire. One is residency requirements, others that they're seeing that we are a victim of the labor market and neighboring communities within the region are offering more salary than we are. And so they accept those positions instead of working for us. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we have in filling our vacancies. But, we're still trying to recruit. Right now, we do have a hiring freeze as we get an understanding of what comes out of this budget process. And we can hopefully strategically unfreeze those that we've frozen in the process.
Well, thank you. The reason I asked about the interim positions is some of them are long-term with folks who are working right now in those positions. So they already live here, a lot of that is not the problem. So that's the reason. I was just trying to get some clarity as when will those positions be solidified.
We have a few that are actively in the recruiting mode and we'll see what those recruitments provide us. We hope that we do that. Interims are always invited to apply.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Townsend? Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, concerning, we've already made the decision to go revenue neutral. My overall thought is we've been presented a budget that takes into account the negative deficit we were, the structural imbalance, which is a great thing. And we just need to go ahead, I think, and move forward with what's been presented with a couple of things I'd like clarity on, though. Last night, the mayor made some suggestions with regard to possible dollars from other sources. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor. So you talked about possibly a freeze of commissioner salaries and if you needed something. So count me in on that one for whatever that would make, benefit that would make. I think I would like to see a ruling from legal. There was another pot of money you suggested could be a possible contribution of dollars, and I'd like to have them, we consider a particular use of them maybe. Were you talking about the casino grant fund? So that started before I came. I know a lot of small 501c3s look forward to that. That is not supposed to be their only source of income. But can that legally be done? I don't know if it has to be used that way or it's totally up to us and what that means. So that's
For the casino grants,
right.
yes, those have to be used for, based on the agreement, they have to be used for charitable organizations, not government.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. So good try, but now we know that that's not doable. The other thing I would just ask for more information on, doesn't have to be given tonight. I'll follow up with an email, is about the difference in bus schedules that will impact, that was proposed. So I want to be able to talk to constituents who have questions on a very personal level. What does that mean to me if I rely on that bus schedule? What options are we talking about? So in our more high-level discussion, I heard that, but I just need to get more information on that to be prepared. The other thing that will have a big impact on District 1 would be the frequency of mowing vacant lots. We were talking about going to maybe a month, I think, with that, but there was some discussion about revamping the contracts to see maybe 3. So just where we're on that. I realize that's just part of the pain. And we need to give, in my opinion, this budget a chance to work for revenue neutral, the concept to work. May not like it, looking at red next year, may not go that way, next year. But I think we need to go ahead and commit with clarity. I trust our staff has looked at a lot of things that, they had to give up, we're not liking, but this is what it is. So, thank you.
Thank you. Can I say one thing? Just real quick, just to add to what Commissioner Townsend said, just something for staff to think about and our administrator. I brought this up a while ago, probably a couple of years ago, is looking at our contracts. I know that Commissioner Townsend talked about mowing, and that's just one example. I don't know if our department heads have talked about renegotiating contracts and then looking at how much we're spending on outsourcing and contractual agreements that we may have. I know that there's certain departments that, I know for a fact that there's certain vendors that we consistently outsource to, and they're like forever. I mean, I can name a handful, it's been on the police department, that have had contracts with this government since I've been here. And I don't know why that is, but just making sure we look at our RFP process to make sure that we open that up. And not just to big businesses, but I think is something lacking here at the unified government. You talk about WMBE contracts and the teeth that's in that, and making sure that our women and our minorities, contractors, entrepreneurs, and stakeholders have an opportunity to adequately do business, and that's enforced, valued, cultivated, and appreciated, and encouraged. That has been lacking, at least for as long as I've been mayor, and just something that we could look into that as well. But just really looking at also, I don't want to get into the particulars, but I've mentioned this, I believe, to our last interim county administrators, our lawsuits. How much are we spending? How much are we setting aside for that? And looking at just little things like that on maybe some of this stuff is processes to cut down on things that get us caught up in litigation, and having a deep dive into our systems, our management practices, things of that nature. There were some suggestions from the auditor that came in 2022 that were on the book. I'm not saying all of them should be embraced, but I think they should be looked at and considered as well. And I don't know if our CFO or our budget directors looked at some of those opportunities from recommendations from that audit that was done from that outside organization. So those are just some of the things that caught my mind, and I didn't want to forget it when I heard Commissioner Townsend talking about mowing, because I do know that we might be able to get a reduced cost on some of these services just by going out renegotiating contracts. So thank you, Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Just a couple of cleanup items for me, really. When Senator Tyson was here, and I used Amazon as an example, for example, we do have one Amazon, we have two located here, one of which is on an abatement and the other one is not. So we actually do have an Amazon, if we're going to pick on Amazon, that's here fully on the tax rolls with no incentives, just for the record. The second item is that as she and I were kind of talking back and forth about other sources of revenue, one of our line items on the document tonight is the other taxes for the 25 projection of 21 million. Can you just remind us? So it's above the licenses, permits, charges, fines, forfeitures, et cetera. And it's below the property tax and the sales tax and the pilot. So can you just remind us what's in that 21 million? And if it includes motor vehicle taxes, which it might, those apparently do not fall under the revenue neutral rule. And I would like clarification. So motor vehicle taxes are completely separate from property taxes. Okay. Are there other taxes other than motor vehicle taxes in the other taxes line of 21 million?
Yes. So Michael Peterson, Assistant Budget Manager. So the largest item in other taxes of that 20 million is a $10 million annual appropriation that's done for the STAR bonds. And
Say
so
that
that's
again.
half of it is an annual appropriation that's budgeted on both the expense and the revenue side in the city general fund. So that's about $10 million. That's not revenue that we receive, and it's just also not expense that we pay
Thank you.
out.
Okay.
I know Debbie might know more familiar about that than me. Motor vehicle is a big one. Occupation business tax is one of the other taxes. Another few big ones is the casino tax. So that's one, the 3% gaming revenue that we were talking about the other day.
last night. And then any delinquent taxes that are collected and liquor alcohol tax would be several of the other big ones.
Thank you. I really appreciate it because it's just one of those items that I need to be reminded of fairly regularly. I'm trying to read the room with my fellow commissioners, and I have a little bit of a sense that we sort of feel like we've done everything we can do. Sort of. And let's just get to it. But the reason why I was kind of asking last night for the walkthrough was because Tuesday is a public hearing when the public will come and talk to us about what they want. I don't know, maybe they'll come say, you've done everything you can do. We're not asking for anything. I don't know. Reality might be that that is what they will come and say. We understand it's difficult. We're not asking for anything, but I'd like to be a little bit more prepared than I am right now for the public hearing portion of this budget process. So that's part of why I was making that comment yesterday, and I'm really willing to go either way. I really am. If we've done, because you've done the work, if we've done all we can do and we're not really interested in looking at, well, can we move this here, which is all we would be able to do, then I'm good with that too. Mayor, I'm just trying to read the room, if you will, with the commissioners, but also at the same time, have a better feel for myself, like to Commissioner Townsend's point, when one of the details of this budget is how frequently we would mow either the right of way or a land bank property. And what the public might come and ask us for. So that's part of why I was, looking for just a little bit more detail. I mean, I know we have other issues in this big budget that we all know we're going to have to grapple with. And I know down the road we'll have to grapple with those, some of which we may not even know what they are just yet. But anyway, that's all I'm saying.
Follow up real quick, and then we'll have Commissioner Townsend and then Commissioner Lopez. I guess my question along the lines of Commissioner Bynum's insight was, are we at a balanced budget, what you all have now? Because I really wasn't clear last night if we were, but I mean, between the county and the city, the proposal you have given us, or administrators given us that it's come from, is that reflective of a balanced budget for revenue neutral for 2025?
It is. It's a balanced budget for all funds.
Now here's my other question. Commissioner Bynum yesterday asked for a deeper dive, and I know we're shuffling, things around to maybe, okay, we like this, we don't like that. Okay, maybe we don't cut this, or, oh, we forgot about this. Talking to the administrator, because of the condensed timeline, and he said he's going to do what he can, but he cannot get you that deep dive, line by line, down to the penny that I'm sure we all want to see for every department. It's just, there's not enough time to get that done. And that would be asking too much of our staff. I mean, they've worked hard beyond probably what they expected they'd be working this year as it is. So that's a question, but I say that to say that maybe, and just maybe, the budget is 467, right? It's the same budget from last year, about $467 million.
So it's a $473 million budget.
73, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it grew like 1.5%, which is the lowest that we've ever had that it's grown.
Yes, but I say that to say, out of a budget that large, I know our DA was wanting a couple $100,000, and our sheriff also, he called me this morning, basically saying, Mayor, I'm telling you now, I'm going to come back to this body. He said, I've crunched, there is nothing, I can't operate statutorily my jail with this deficit. He said, there's no way, he said, bills are not going to get paid, basically. And he called me just really, imploring me to have this body, at least take note of that, because it's not just the safety of his officers, but it's also the safety of the inmates. And then it's also, the statutory services that he's supposed to provide, and our district attorney as well. And I mentioned that, and I came up with some ideas. So I don't know if you all can find 1.2 million somewhere out of a $470 million budget somehow, some way. I don't know. But I'm kind of following Commissioner Bynum saying that she's good at where we're at. Commissioner Townsend saying is good where we're at. We may not need to come back to the table to have a brief deep dive on what we can shuffle around. So I guess the ask is that maybe you all take a harder look and see if you can squeeze any more juice out of that turnip, it maybe meet or at least come halfway to try and meet the needs of our public safety officials, because, and I'm not saying that just because I came from public safety, but those are huge concerns when you talk about lives and safety situations. I'm sorry, we'll have our administrator, and then Commissioner Townsend, Commissioner Bynum, no, Commissioner Lopez, and then Commissioner Stites in that order.
Am I first?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Well, I think that's a fair thing. We'll take a hard look tomorrow in our budgets that we presented and see if there may be other offerings that operationally we feel that we can make with some trade-offs and things like that to give you options to choose from. Appreciate, Mayor, your backing off on the line item approach. But I think we'll take a hard look at to meet you and your fellow commissioners' request for some options to consider. Again, I'm just do have to remind you, we're constrained just like you are. There will not be more property tax revenue available. And I think we all know that, particularly reinforced with the state senators' presentation today. But as I said, when we started this a month ago, we're going to make this work one way or the other. And you have to pass a budget that you're comfortable with as our policy guide. So we'll get a policy guide before you with options. And so if want, we'll see what we come up with tomorrow. Can we reserve a Monday meeting if we need it?
Yes.
Okay. If we need it, if we can do it via email, we'll do it via email, but we have some work to do tomorrow.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of other things we talked about, that were talked about yesterday and again tonight, and I appreciate Commissioner Bynum reading the room, and I think what we are looking for, she was, and I mentioned more clarity on specific things, but I don't know, we need to do the line by line thing, because it is quite significant that we have a balanced budget right now. If there's more money to be found, gonna squeeze that limit again, I don't know. But that would be the main thing to keep in mind. And the other thing that our administrator said tonight, we have to take action by Thursday, but this will be a living document. So as you mentioned about the concerns for the Sheriff's Department, I see a little bit of a difference between what those needs might be to require versus the DA. And DA knows, my name for him is Rumpelstiltskin, because I tell him we can't spin straw into gold, and I appreciate what his need is for more people. But something you said last night, Mayor, about how do we end up in the same situation? And part of that is we get to meetings like this and we're shown what we need to do, but we want to push it still. So sometimes we just need to say, you know, we have been brought a balanced budget. Let's go with that. This is a living document. We probably will have to make some amendments, but we're going to know more about this 4 months from now, 6 months from now, than we know right now. To do that, we will have to make arrangements and accommodations for those people in our custody already. Compared to say what the DA's request is, I would like to see that, but I was encouraged last night by Chief Oakman's willingness to work with the DA to see what could be done that does not add another dollar, but add service. So if that can be done. But those were just some of the things I wanted to comment on again. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah. August 14th. August 14th, we have a tax sale coming up. Okay. We got all these land bank items, land bank issues. Put those on the tax sale, sell them. Sell them. We make our money. We're going to make our property tax money. We're not jacking around with all this low income, whatever, that's owned by a bunch of hedge funds and we're losing out. We're getting ran over left and right. Just sell them. That solves the whole mowing issue. Make the new property owners liable to mow them and just be done. We'll save a ton of money that way already. Then the casino charitable revenue, why don't we just transfer it all just over to the Parks Foundation? These nonprofits, they go get their own money. They have their own charity auctions. They raise their money. What's wrong with that? Why don't we just do that? But the land bank properties, put them on the tax sale, get rid of them. Just get rid of them and now we don't have to mow them. Now the new landowners, I don't care if they build anything or not. Who cares? Just get rid of them. It's costing us more money. This is asinine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. In listening to the charge that all of us at the table here are being dealt, I'm pleased to hear that there's a commitment to continue to do the deep dive. I thought maybe this might just end it, but seems to be a commitment to continue to dig deeper. And I think that's where we will really find the efficiencies and the savings. Mayor, I want to go back to your comment that when you were an employee here, you had a layoff to help balance the budget that the unified government had, and they still raised taxes. We're not raising taxes and we're not impacting employees. That's the difference today than what it was in your particular situation. So I hope the employees do respect and understand that we have worked hard along with staff to ensure that we didn't impact an employee that was going to be laid off. Moving forward, new monies, I don't disagree with what was stated by my colleague, Commissioner Lopez, in reference to getting rid of excess property or vacated property that we have. We can get rid of it. That's new money for us. And those will address some of the concerns that we have in reference to the DA and the sheriff and other things that come up. What we have done with this is we haven't talked about the efficiencies that this may very well lead to. We have a new IT system that is up and running now, is my understanding, and we haven't identified the efficiencies yet. So I'm hoping to see some efficiencies come forward, and let's hope that it's the first place those efficiencies come in is the motor vehicle department in our treasury, so that we don't continue to be so frustrating to our citizens. The restructure of departments in reference to some of the services, the restructure and reorganization. I know the administrator talked about doing that when he came in. He was going to take a high-level look and possibly restructure. I'm looking forward to that restructure within the Economic Development Committee and the Economic Development Office, because now we actually have an economic development person. So hopefully we'll be able to address some of the financial issues as we provide ourselves new avenues in which to negotiate economic development incentives. And I think putting those back on the table can send a strong message in future development. One of the suggestions that I proposed to Reggie and staff was an amnesty program for fees and fines to help us this year while we're in a tight budget process in the revenue neutral, that we go after the fees and fines, and if there's interest associated to it, anything less than a year, that interest is forgiven if they pay the base fine within a certain time frame and get it off the books. It cleans up the books, it helps us get additional revenue, and it gives everybody a clean start and a clean slate. The only thing about an amnesty program is they shouldn't come around very often. So we should be time specific and adamant about making those funds come back to us in an expedient manner so that we can clean up the books, and that helps with efficiency. I think that's a great way to get additional dollars in a manner that allows us to address some of the concerns that have been here. I do like the aspect of the quarterly report to kind of keep us on track as to where we are. And I'm sure there's a lot of wise people around this table, and I'm sure that they will have questions and opportunities to have more input into this process. I don't want to just lay it all on the administrators and staff's shoulders. We are an elected body. We have some responsibilities too. And even though we may not agree with some of the comments each other's make, but it's very important that we continue to have that dialogue, because nobody has all the answers, but collectively we're smarter as a bunch. And I respect and appreciate that. And I think the public will appreciate that also. The balancing of budget, not all funds are going to be impacted by revenue neutral. And I think that's some of the confusion, and I'm really pleased that Senator Tyson brought that up. There are additional funds and fees that we can bring in that aren't tied to property tax. Revenue neutral will allow us to bring in more revenue if we go out and seek it in ways to find the additional new revenue. I'm not saying raising fees. I'm not saying raise additional costs for certain things, but it does help us go back and look at, are we properly pricing our products and services to the public? And if we're not, we may want to sit down and recalibrate those. And the one thing I really liked about the budget is as I stated last evening, Mr. Administrator and staff, I'm really pleased that on the county side, the additional funds that had excess savings accounts in them, I call them reserves. The excess reserves were brought more into uniform in with policy. As chair of the audit committee, it concerns me greatly when I see us not following policy. And when I bring it up, it sounds like I'm picking on somebody, but our auditors point that out to us. And that is one way that we can go back and be more efficient and deal with some of the things we're dealing with. Is these audits are conducted. We ought to follow the recommendations of our audits. Audits are given, we review them, then they're shelved and forgot about. We should take action on these audits because they are mandated or requested by us to be done. And not to take those recommendations is not only a disservice to the auditors to spend the time, but the time that's given by staff to answer the questions in those audits. So I think we should review some of our audits as to how we can be more competitive and be more responsive to the recommendations that come out of our own audits. Mayor, that's just some. I know one of the discussions today in the public forum I was at was, I think the public needs clarification on the BPU pilot and the fact that it's not going to be on the bill. So I would hope as we move forward that we can have some distinct clarity as to how that is going to not only affect the public, but possibly have it overshadow in our budget. So I do hope that collectively we are able to put together a community messaging process that educates our public so that we don't create another fervor by not having clear communication. I thought that came out quite considerably today from the forum that we were at. The competitive bid process, I like a competitive bid. I don't like to take the lowest bid. I think the lowest qualified bid is what a lot of people operate on, but a competitive bidding process. There is many more that I'm willing to discuss, but this is a start. It's not everything we need. I think this allows us to at least start the process. And I do sincerely respect and appreciate the commitment that staff has made. And I think through all of this communication, some education has occurred that it's not as onerous to do what we are doing. It is more the fiscally responsible thing to do as a governing body. And Mr. Administrator, you were brought on board to do just this. And if we helped you in accomplishing that, I'll be more than happy to accept that as part of the revenue neutral vote. But it's long been needed. I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody. I'm just stating that we are an elected body. The comment was made about kicking the can down the road. I'm not willing to kick the can down the road. I'm willing to go to work and try to find a remedy here. And I believe my colleagues are doing the same. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, body. I appreciate it. And that's all I have for tonight.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. That's why there's more than one of us here to have a lot of ideas exchange. However, I have to respond to the question about who cares about the land bank lots, because a lot of them are in my district and in other districts. And so people do care. I care. My constituents care. And to have just a wholesale fire sale of property would not be something that I would ever support, or I would think that my constituents support. I would much rather deal with lawns to be mowed, because what we're talking about is giving way opportunity for growth and development. And I'm encouraged that now we have an economic development individual to fill that role. I'm encouraged that we can continue to plan. That's what we do in the economic development meetings. You know, we hear plans for development. So this is not land just to be thrown away, given away. I give you kudos for trying to come up with a workable plan, but I don't see that as workable. People do care. I care. My constituents care. And as we talk about revitalizing Northeast area, having land, a commodity that there will be no more of, it's very important. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, I guess, thank you, Commissioner Townsend, for the call to action. Our HR director and her assistant are there. Now that I have someone to join me, just for the record, please make it a note to freeze my pay increase for next year, as well as Commissioner Townsend's, as well as Commissioner Burrows. I got another one. Do I? Oh wow. Okay. I have a fifth.
You can freeze mine too.
Okay. All right. How many is that? Raise your hand. All right. We've got, I didn't see Commissioner Davis' hand up there, but I don't want to leave that opportunity out for him. Okay, his hand went up. All right. So, and I'm sure the commissioners that aren't here tonight will think about it. So you've got, I believe, 7 commissioners and the mayor that have chosen to take the lead and freeze our salaries. That's money. I'd like for you to let us know how much money that would be. And then this body can talk about, maybe I believe Commissioner Lopez gave a great idea. Maybe we donate it to the parks or something that can be reinvested in something that could be valued for our community. I'd like to know what that figure would be. And that's a commitment from me to this community that none of us that won't take a pay increase next year.
Mayor, if I may, and excuse me for interrupting, I would be also willing to give up my portion of the constituent fund money that each commissioner was given. I'd be more than happy to surrender that. I haven't spent a dime yet. It's not my intent. I feel as an elected official, I will be there, but I would be more than happy to submit that. I know it's not a large amount of money, but it may help a person in a program or something like that. So I'm willing to give the full amount back to the budget
All right, I
process.
sound like an auctioneer. I got 5,000. Do I have 10?
How about you bid me 100, 150, maybe 2 quarter, 150.
He's done that before. Look at that.
We got Commissioner Davis. He's agreed to donate his as well. So we've got, yes.
Oh,
Commissioner.
I have a question. Sorry.
Okay. All right. It's a question. All right. Go ahead, Commissioner. didn't-
I'm sorry.
Whoa, wait a
When
minute.
when you're auctioning, you, that
I'm
little
so
yellow
sorry.
hand.
I was just trying to get a word in there. No, I think I'm for having the discussion about both. I think it just depends on what is the intent. I've used my district, which I know that district funding is going to be cut and will be cut, and I agree with that, to pour back into my district. And so if we're just going to take the money and put it towards another nonprofit, well, I would rather just be more strategic and make sure that it goes in my district. Same with the pay free. So I'm open to that conversation, but I would love for us to have more conversation on what are we going to do, because it is not going to be, it's not going to solve the millions of dollars that's needed across the board to meet the needs. And so I'm for the conversation, but I just want to make sure I'm not being redundant. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. So to the Commissioner's concern, those of us that did step up and say that those monies could be frozen for us and be allocated to something else. Administrator, just make sure we get a total amount and which commissioners, and you've already got my commitment, and then we'd have another conversation at a future date, and then this commission can decide where to allocate those funds.
Will do, sir.
Commissioner Bynum.
I just wanted to make 2 clarifications. First of all, thank you to the person who sent me the link to the story about the city of Chanute eliminating their city mill levy. It equals $2 million. And the alternative that they adopted, since they also own their municipal utility, is that they did a just slightly under 16% increase. So they had to go look for that revenue elsewhere, and they did through raising their utility rates. I'm just sharing that with you, since that was brought to us earlier as a story of being creative. Secondarily, Mayor, just for clarity, to circle back to the sheriff, and we know that he's going to have bills due and payable, and we think we might be looking for 1.2 million-ish. I just need Reggie, the county information from yesterday. You tell me if I'm reading it right. It's a budget of about 84.9 million. Personnel is about 57 point. So, because we can only find that money on the county side is my point.
That is correct.
So 84 million, 57 million of which is people, and we've held them harmless. So now the pool of money we've got left to find the money for the sheriff is now 27.6 million. Is that your, yes, ma'am, please.
Included in the total number is the 1.75 million that's transferring fund balances, because you have to
Right.
transfer it in and then you offset it with an equal expense, basically. So, well, it goes into the fund balance. So you would really reduce that by that 1.7 or so million. That at least in the proposed budget is designated for fund balance.
I just wanted to bring clarity to the dollar amount that we were starting with from which we can find possibly 1.2 million. It isn't hundreds of millions of dollars. It's tens of millions of dollars. So, and I'm open to continuing to look for that, maybe even after we have to pass the budget. I have one more request for legal, someone. When the mayor of Edwardsville was talking to us during the budget process, she indicated we took one vote and passed both the city and the county budgets. My question is, can we separate them and do two separate votes when we adopt? I would like to know, and if you don't know right now, that's fine, but I'd like to know. And my preference would be adopt a county budget with a vote and then adopt a city budget with a vote. Thank you.
We will check.
Thank you. I just want to let our staff and public that may be watching know that the vast majority of our commissioners agreed to go revenue neutral on our salaries as well as some of our other funding streams. And so I just ask that our employees, who we do value and we're going to be taken care of, I encourage you to continue to innovate once this budget is passed, because the budget will be passed. Continue to help this government find ways to streamline operations and operate a little more efficiently. Continue to, especially department heads, to hold staff accountable to providing the best level of customer service that I know we all expect folks to provide. And to continue to do those things, not just this year because we're revenue neutral, but every year, because it does make a difference. I can say as the mayor, part of my job is to sell our community, to promote it in a positive light, to try and attract business and jobs and all those great things, and let folks know this is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. And not just those folks, but also to make sure that we keep folks here. One thing that I've learned is that through this process is that going revenue neutral every year is not sustainable. So that is in line with Commissioner Burrows, that continuum of innovating, streamlining, finding best practices across the country to at least mitigate any tax increases or burdens to our residents is key. But we also have to know, and I've said this, in me being supportive of our residents and being community driven, we can't keep doing the same things and expect a different result. We can't keep taxing, spending, borrowing, and depleting our reserve funds and giving away the farm to our corporate welfare to folks and think that the dynamic here is going to change. I'll be bringing forth some, with our administrator, hopefully some other options that could be of value for you all to consider. I just ask you that you please just work with me and keep an open mind to that. I always respect the vote of this commission, may not agree with it all the time, but I do respect it. But I think there's some huge opportunities for us to expand economic development and do so in a way that's responsible, that'll provide the good services and resources that I just talked about that can attract those individuals that want to stay anchored in Wyandotte County. And not just in a certain pocket of this community, because what hurts me is when I look at Commissioner Townsend and Commissioner Hill's district and Commissioner Burns' district, these areas east of 635, a lot of those folks are suffering and they're without basic necessities and goods and services and resources that they deserve. It doesn't matter that they're at the lower socioeconomic ladder. We still have an obligation to these people because they live here too, they have families, and they love this place. As a unified government, I am encouraged to see, and I hold a lot that to Commissioner Stites of really fighting hard for Bonner and Edwardsville, as well as Commissioner Burrows, that we do have two cities, or actually three when you talk about Lake Quivira. And they are a part of our county. And I want, and that's the whole dot crowd thing that we brought forward, is I want us to get to a point to where we feel good about ourselves, where we live in our community, and not let outside forces change our perception of who we are. We are dot proud. We're going to get through this. We've got through it before. I've lived through it. Like I was laid off, came back, almost got laid off again. I've seen several downturns throughout the career as my employee here, and we got through it. This is a resilient community of dots. And this is a government of great people that don't have to work here. But, we work here because, not because we need to or have to, but because we want to be good public servants. And we care about folks too. And so let's just remember that, and let's just share that message into our constituents that, yes, there is going to be shared sacrifices. Everything that you've come to expect, you may not get in this coming year, but police cars are still going to run, ambulances are still going to be there. You know, things are still going to be cut, maybe not as often. Trash is still going to get picked up. Someone is still going to pick up the phone here. That young man or woman is still going to be at that window to answer any questions that you may have. This government is going to continue to run, and the good people that I know work here, and this governing body is going to continue to do everything we can to make sure that this is a great and safe place to live, work, and raise a family. So I just want to end with that and say thank you. I do believe that the administrator is going to try and squeeze some more juice out of the turnip for our sheriff and our DA. I don't believe, Commission, that we would need to have another meeting. Administrator, I don't know your thoughts. You would share that information with us. I believe what you're going to get on the 15th will be a balanced budget with the best possible financials that our staff could find to make sure that our staff is protected, essential services are still being done, and that the request of our residents have been met. And they were simple. Put a pressure point on BPU with the pilot. The pilot's coming off. Number two, do something about property taxes. Revenue neutral is here. So I think we've met and exceeded the expectations of our residents within an already challenged budget. And I applaud our staff, and I applaud this commission for having the courage to do that. Not for me, not for any proponents, like Commissioner Kane said, of revenue neutral, but for the people that have year after year said, hey, just give it a try and put a pressure point on things and tighten your belt a little bit. And I think we'll all share in the success of this. So thank you. I'll now take a motion for, yes.
May
Yeah, the executive session.
may I answer the question from earlier? Yes, it can be done in 2 votes.
Thank you. Mayor, Commissioner Bynum, I move the commission go into executive session until 7:50 PM in the 5th floor conference room to consult with our attorneys and discuss confidential matters related to potential claims and litigation as permitted under Kansas open meetings. And that David Johnston, County Administrator, Angela Lawson, Acting Chief Counsel, Wendy Green, Deputy Chief Counsel, be present to participate in the discussion, and that we reconvene in open session at 7:50 PM here in the 5th floor conference room.
Okay, that will in effect take us out of our special session, and a motion has been made to take us in executive session. Do I have a second? Okay. There's a motion and a second. Clerk, roll call.
Roll call, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows, Townsend,
Aye.
Burns,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Kane, Lopez,
Aye.
Stites, motion carries.
All right, we will be in executive session shortly.